Good morning. We are on the 218th hearing of the Undercover Police Inquiry, the last day of Phase 3, Tranche 3. The final witness, Jon Boutcher, the Detective Chief Inspector who shut down the Special Demonstration Squad, the SDS. He is currently the Chief Constable of the Police Service of Northern Ireland. He was in charge of numerous undercover operations throughout the 2010s. He was the officer in charge when Jean-Charles de Menez was shot. He's a controversial character, but we are hoping that he will be very critical of the SDS. I'm joined by Donald O'Driscoll of the Undercover Research Group. What are we expecting to hear from him today?
Well, he's the current serving Chief Constable of PNSI, so as far as I'm aware, he's the only serving police officer actually giving evidence.
He might be in uniform.
He might be in uniform, indeed. That'll be quite interesting. So I think that will color how he plays it. You know, he's still in the job. But he's definitely a very interesting character, very complex career. You know, you don't get to be Chief Constable of Police Service in Northern Ireland easily enough.
Right.
And in fact, one of the previous witnesses, John Greaves, was on his way to that position himself. But we do know he's not a special branch officer himself. He came in after the merger and is known to be quite critical of special branch as a whole. So how I think there'll be a lot of exploration about how that played into the final days of the SDS, because we know that within the SDS they felt really paranoid that the management were out to get them following the merger, and but there's a lot of evidence over the last few days about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so we heard yesterday from Julian McKinney, who said that it was his recommendation that the unit be shut down, and he approved Jon Boutcher to do it. So there's clearly, it wasn't just his decision to shut them down, but he is the guy who actually pulls the trigger. So I mean, if I would imagine he's going to have to justify that in some way, and I think there's plenty of he's got plenty of ammunition for that. It would be fantastic if we got on camera a police officer in uniform, a senior police officer in uniform, slagging off the SDS and saying that what a terrible bunch they were. So I mean, that to me, that's the ideal outcome of today. But it may be the case, as you say, because he's currently in a very senior role. He maybe doesn't want to burn any bridges, doesn't want to offend anybody. We saw yesterday where all the criticism that was put to Julian McKinney about himself, he responded with, well, that's a very experienced officer and that's their view. I'm saddened to hear it. And that's kind of as much as you got, really. It might be the case again today.
Yeah. And, there's a line of the commander. There's Boutcher, McKinney, Frankie Flood, who's now dead, who's the head of the SDS. But there is the common theme of resistance to change. So I expect that a lot of what Boutcher will be asked is about what's been fed up to him from these managers who are going, we want to reform the unit, we want to bring in, modernize it, but the SDS itself doesn't want to be modernized. And it's quite clear, McKinney brushed over this slightly, that when HN's 72, the DI, the operations manager, the SDS, said, have you lost confidence in me? And they went, yes, and we have your replacement already lined up. He kind of fudged that question, to say, we had contingencies. But even with that answer, it's like those contingencies would have been explored up the line. So I'm hoping it's clear there's more to that story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's, how much of it was was it like, oh my God, we need to shut them down right now? Or was it a few years of like, well, we're going to have to shut this unit down and we can't do it all at once. And we're going to have to replace various people and get our ducks in a row before we can get rid of them.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing is what came out yesterday was they were making quite a lot of efforts to modernize it. They could see that, the police, they still want to spy. They can't help themselves.
Oh God, yeah.
But they also recognizing all the regulations have changed. The SDS just weren't staying up to speed and refusing things. And the SDS had, clearly the SDS have their own narrative, which is about justifying their continued existence and trying to stay in toxicity. And they're a very different narrative about, well, actually, we respected these officers. We just wanted to modernize them. We wanted to bring them up to date. They're no longer the 1970s racists. They want you. So,
right, yeah.
I think we've learned an awful lot more about that process and the different narratives
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that's come out over the last couple of days is an admission by the witnesses that, in fact, yes, one of the strengths of the SDS was viewed to be its disruption. I'm hoping that we're going to get that confirmed again today. You know, that like, yeah, what was good about the unit? Well, what was good about it was they were very good at disruption. And what did you want to keep? What went forward? Today, if anything, we're going to get a glimpse of if anybody's going to be casting any questions about, you know, undercover deployments after the end of the SDS, after the end of the MPORU. It's going to be this guy. He's the guy who was in charge of it throughout the 2010s. Maybe we'll get a glimpse of something a bit more kind of contemporary with that sort of thing.
Yeah, and the disruption thing is interesting because what it means isn't actually pinned down. It's this amorphous word that could be causing the group to split apart, or it could just be, you know, making a demo less effective. It's in the national intelligence model, the sort of national program that they're all working to is like part of the remit of intelligence is for disruption. But once you get to that thing, it's like human rights then start playing a real thing. If you're disrupting lawful activity, you're breaching human rights, and that's Articles 10, 11, the rights of assembly and free speech. So it's quite a sensitive and legally interesting area, and one we haven't really seen that much in the inquiry. You know, a lot of it's about evasion of personal life, but we also have an invasion of our free speech, our right to assembly, and the police. You know, we know the police don't care about our rights and that, but you know, they're there for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
It should be pointing out that one of the whole reasons for Articles 10 and 11, what led to them thing, was to stop that. You know, was to allow people to assemble against Nazis and other fascist parties. It was the far right's governments banning these things. So it's like, this isn't just an abstract idea. It's about protecting, you know, our freedoms.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the broadcast, the hearing will start at 10 a.m., which means the broadcast will start at 1:15. Tune in. I've put the link in the notes below. We'll be doing videos throughout the day. But at the end of the day, we'll do a bit more of a recap of like everything to a certain extent that we've heard over the last 7 weeks of hearings. So please join us for that. Anything else you'd like to add about Jon Boutcher? No. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you all in a bit. Thanks for the likes and shares. Always helps. Please keep